Hello, my name is Dean Contover. Today we have a guest. Her name is Lori Trahan. She's U.S. Representative from the 3rd District of Massachusetts, and we welcome her to the show. But the first question I want to ask her is, what team is going to win the World Cup in soccer?
Not the first question I was expecting. But you know, it is, well, of course, we always root for the United States.
That's correct.
They're going to have some tough competition.
That's correct.
And you know, Dean, my grandparents came from Brazil and Portugal.
Right.
So we can't go wrong for a number 2.
Yeah.
Brazil looks really strong. My youngest stepson, Christian, grew up here in Chelmsford.
Okay.
And I talked to him because he is...
the guru.
Oh, he sure is.
Okay.
And he says that Brazil is likely to win.
Okay, I say England, but even though I want the United States to win, but they're not going to advance.
Yeah.
They probably advance out of the round robin, but they're not going to advance. They're going to lose their first game after that. But excuse me. The other question I have in regards to World War II records, what's the status of that? They released the 1950 census, right? And if they released the 1950 census to the public, why haven't they released the World War II veterans? And what's the story there? If somebody wants to contact you in regards to their great-grandfather or their grandfather being in World War II.
Yeah, this is an issue that comes up all the time. Of course, some people know to call, but not everyone does. And it's not just World War II, it's every war subsequent to World War II, and it's complex. So having to navigate how you do that can be difficult. I'll tell you, 2 agencies that are always great to check in with are the Department of Veteran Affairs and the National Archives.
Right.
But if folks are having an issue, that's precisely why we're here, is to help. So
cut
call
the red tape, allegedly.
Absolutely, and we do it all the time for folks who want those records or are entitled to medals, commendations. So give us a call. It's 978-459-0101. And ask for Jorge. Jorge Morales Lopez is a veteran himself, and he knows how important it is to get those records.
Right. Now, we have coming up, I don't want to specifically say the day, but we have a veteran in Chelmsford who's going to get their Purple Heart.
Yes.
So what happened in that? Tell me the procedure, how that happened.
Yes.
And
so
what you did to get that for him.
You bet. Fred Tumeth, which we're going to be in Chelmsford on Thursday at the Community of Arts building.
Right.
And has long awaited his Purple Heart. Sometimes the way these things go, it's, paperwork going back and forth, delays, change of personnel, and he got caught in that. But it was entitled to his Purple Heart. Called our office after working on this for years. And Jorge, who I just mentioned, he's, he is the real star in this.
So I should have him on my show eventually.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I went to the Veterans Breakfast at the Chelmsford Council of Age on Aging, Senior Center.
It's it's last Thursday in the morning, 9 o'clock in the morning.
Yes, and it was
and anybody can go there.
Anybody can go. It was packed. It was so great to see, so many people in person there again. Because I remember during the pandemic when we were, packing up boxes and shipping them out to cars. But to see everybody together was joyful.
Yeah.
And we did. We talked about how if folks need, medals or need records or family members or even just, other veterans that they know of, neighbors, to call us, because this is a real feel-good story that Fred was, as you can imagine, frustrated. He couldn't get his Purple Heart, and so it's going to be a real treat to have the community honor him.
Oh, good. That's good. I'm glad. Are you going to pin it on him, or is his significant other going to pin it on him? Do you know?
We always ask what they prefer, and so based on his wishes, we'll do. It's his day.
Exactly.
So whatever he wants.
Exactly.
But I do have to tell you, it's one of my greatest honors. We recently did a pinning ceremony for our Vietnam veterans.
Oh, okay.
And I got to pin each of the veterans, and there's nothing cooler about this job than to honor the service and sacrifice.
And he is a Vietnam veteran. I don't think we mentioned it.
Yes, I'm sorry if we didn't. Yeah, he is a Vietnam veteran, and
cool.
It should be a great day.
Yeah, cool. I'm glad that that you're doing that for people. The combat infantry badge that I'm concerned about, I know hasn't been put into the 117th Congress. It was in the 116th Congress and never moved out of the committee, I guess. So I guess we won't do that for a while. I'd like to talk about, speaking of that, we're into warfare. Ukraine and Russia, it seems like the sanctions are working. Russians don't have ball bearings, and ball bearings are almost like chips or gasoline. If you don't have ball bearings, your trucks don't run. I mean, it's just a catastrophe in regards to, it's amazing. And I know you've been to Poland, right? It's amazing that we can get equipment from the United States to Poland to Ukraine, and they can't go 50 to 100 miles from their border and supply their troops. I'm going to predict this. Looking at their, when they leave their positions, it's unsanitary. They're going to come down with diseases. Units are going to come down with dysentery and things like that. And I'm going to predict that for the future. But go ahead, talk about Poland and
Well, I was able to go on a trip
Yeah, right.
6 weeks after the invasion. We went to Poland, to Romania, and to Moldova, all three countries border.
Moldova too, huh?
Yes, yeah. And
They must be afraid.
Yeah, so Moldova is a very small country,
Right.
has a lot of dependency on Russia for energy, electricity, gas, and they're not part of NATO, and so I think there is huge concern around who's going to be next after Ukraine.
Yeah.
But then there's also a lot of confidence, knowing that the United States and our allies have troops in those countries. Right, we're doing exercises where we're right there, standing with our allies.
Right.
Has never been more important, and it does bring a lot of assurance to our allies. I went with 3 Republicans and 3 Democrats.
Right.
One of the nicest parts of that trip, if they're amidst all the devastation and the atrocity by Putin, was that when we were on that trip, we weren't Republicans or Democrats, we were Americans.
Yeah, usually that's the case.
But in this political climate, sometimes it's forgotten on folks because it's never been so divisive in our country. But we have stood with Ukraine, this entire year, giving them what they need to win this war. There's no question that they're winning this war, and we need.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It
I mean, we thought the big bad Russians, the giants and so forth, and we thought they were well trained, and it just shows that they don't take care of their equipment, they don't take care of themselves. No food, no ammunition, no weapons for the soldiers.
Yeah.
And no mention of no toilet paper. I mean, when you don't have toilet paper, there's sanitary conditions that fall in. That's why I'm predicting diseases are going to come about with these guys.
Yeah, no, the humanitarian crisis has been, incredible, and one that the world has stepped up to help, but it's going to be, ongoing. I think that what Ukraine has demonstrated in terms of courage and resolve has really been an inspiration for countries everywhere, countries who have had their sovereignty threatened, democracies that stand for freedom.
Exactly.
And it's just really important that we continue to make sure that they're in position to win this war.
It's interesting. They may come down with COVID in their military. I don't think they're prepared for diseases, and that's what my prediction is, that they're going to have problems. So I'm going to have to switch off. COVID-19. Are we ready for another pandemic if it happens? I mean, are we prepared?
So, I'm co-chair of the Pandemic Preparedness Caucus.
Oh, okay, good. That's good to know.
Because I'll tell you, I think as so many people, I was appalled in March of 2020 to see how caught off guard we were as a country. Reliance on a foreign supply chain, the inability to supply our healthcare frontline workers and our teachers with PPE and the equipment they needed. And so some of the things that we have done just in this Congress alone is so that we are never in that position again. I'll tell you one thing that we're seeing is these block these blocks in our supply chain are the fact that we're bringing manufacturing back home to the United States.
I hope so.
Yes, look, the Chips and Science Act
Yep.
and the Infrastructure Bill, both of them are geared toward making things. There's nothing our country can't make.
That's true. I agree with you there.
One, it creates great paying jobs. Two, it helps our public health and our national security, as we've learned. So, bringing chips back home, which I have to tell you, Dean, it's going to be great to bring those jobs back to the United States, but this part of Massachusetts is poised to benefit from those jobs coming home.
I have this book. I just got it yesterday, and I wanted to bring it. It's called The Chip War, and maybe you should pick it up. I haven't read it yet, but I mean, that's what I want to talk about, the Chip Act. To me, this is chips are more important than oil sometimes. If you don't have chips in your phone, you don't have a phone. How do people contact you? People don't have landlines anymore.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's basically the Chip Act. So what would happen in the Chip Act? Would 128 start booming? 129, I'm sorry. 129 and chips to start booming? Or?
So a couple of things. You're exactly right. Chips are in everything. Some of the delays that we have felt, whether it's been a car, a washing machine, a phone, has been because we don't make chips in the United States anymore.
No,
and not only do we not make chips in the United States, we have completely outsourced advanced chip design. Which
to Taiwan. We didn't even bring up Taiwan.
Yes, and so we need to bring, and companies want to take advantage of the incentives that are in the Chips and Science Act to bring those jobs home. Yes, so when you bring up 129, absolutely. I mean, the best way for us to cut taxes for folks in Chelmsford is to expand our commercial tax base.
No doubt.
By bringing home, these types of companies to locate here, to grow here, and to thrive here. And I'll tell you, that's not the only thing that's in the Chips and Science Act. I mean, that bill is made so that we can outcompete China. There's certainly a focus on jobs of the future, whether that's cybersecurity, whether it's computer science, AI, all these technologies that we really do need to ramp up for if we're going to continue our global leadership. And so even our Chelmsford Public Schools are going to see an investment in science, STEM programs, K through 12 programs, so kids know this is a field of study that I can pursue and have a great paying job, and that job isn't going to get outsourced over time. We're going to keep them right here.
Wow. All right. So are there any chip companies in the area? I mean, I know we have ball bearing companies in Petersboro, New Hampshire. I know there's a small carrier. Ball bearings are very important. People don't understand ball bearings, and I don't think they understand in regards to chips.
Yeah.
I mean, chips are in these cameras. Chips are in this TV that you're watching.
Yes.
I mean, you
watch everything. Yes. So a lot of these companies are names that you won't recognize, and then others are, right? Analog Devices, we just met with down to talk about how they would like to expand in Massachusetts as a result of the Chips and Science Act. And so I'll tell you, we've had a lot of conversations. One of the things that's in the CHIPS bill is incenting clusters, areas that collaborate. We have a natural cluster right here in the Merrimack Valley. We have the leading public research institution in UMass Lowell that's turning out talented employees so that companies don't have to worry about pipeline, right? I mean, workforce is a big issue.
Right.
But we also have industry that partners with the university, and we have a lot of communities that are open for business, right? They want to attract these employers to make their communities, the great places to work and to live. And so, a lot of what I do is position this part of the state to compete, making sure that when those funds come and those companies come, they're looking at Devon's, they're looking at 129, they're looking at East Campus in Lowell. So it's going to be an exciting time. I think the next 5 years, this area should be transformed, and part of it is because we're so well poised for bringing semiconductors and manufacturing home.
Good. I didn't understand why we wanted to take manufacturing. There was a group of people in this country who wanted to take manufacturing over to China. I know it was cheaper, but it puts us in a bad position.
It sure does.
I mean, then you can't build. People would wonder why we subsidize cars in car companies. Well, if you don't have car companies, you lose that talented pool.
Yeah.
It's like making submarines. You lose that talented submarines, and it's hard to get back.
Yeah, yes. Well, it's good to see that those jobs are going to come home, right? That we are, like I said before, there's nothing that we can't make.
So I should invest in mills, is that it?
Well, I'm
So-
sure, our mills, look, this is where the Industrial Revolution
Yeah,
started.
exactly.
And so it'll be great to see, to the extent that mill space is still available,
Right.
to see it power, the next revolution of growth.
So with that, right, we're gonna segue to the Rock Bridge because we need transportation to get over to the university
Yeah.
and people to move back and forth.
Yeah.
What's the story on the Rock Bridge?
The Rook Bridge is getting replaced
Yay.
because of the bipartisan infrastructure law that we passed. And I'll tell you, Dean, I remember when that bridge, that temporary bridge,
Yeah.
was built 40 years ago. That's my neighborhood. I grew up streets from there.
Mm-hmm.
I used to go down to Papagino's and Market Basket
Right.
and watch it being built. But it's scary to go over that bridge, and it's needed to be replaced for a long time. But it's expensive. That's an expensive bridge, and so
How much is going to be allocated?
$188 million.
Wow. Do you know how many lanes it will be offhand?
I think the design is still sort of
Is it going to be in the same location or is it going to be
same
a
location,
different-
but it's going to look a little different, a whole lot different, actually.
All right.
Yes, and it'll be a much wider bridge, and not only for cars, but also for pedestrians and for bikes.
Yay.
We talked about, crossing that bridge as a pedestrian is frightening with
Yeah.
that chain link
Well,
fence
yeah, that's
covering.
true.
It's, I would always break out into a sprint just to get across it.
Right.
But it's, that is long overdue, and I'll tell you, the federal government used to invest in these projects, right? These local
Right.
infrastructure products, our water and sewer, our bridges, our roads,
Yeah.
our public transit, and they haven't for years. We've been talking about infrastructure, for decades, since I was born. But this administration and this Congress got it done, and it's going to be transformative, not just for, the greater Lowell area, Chelmsford, but the entire Commonwealth.
Do you know that I put that bridge in the Guinness World Record for the longest temporary bridge standing?
That doesn't actually surprise me. Well,
But you know what? They came back and they said, no, we have many other things to deal with, so we can't make it the longer. But see, I wanted to embarrass the politicians by getting in the
it
Guinness
was
Book of World
shameful.
Records.
It was
Yeah,
shameful.
it is. It
But
is.
the Governor Baker came up. It was one of the first projects that he announced that was going to benefit from the funding from the
Oh,
federal
cool.
government.
It's about time.
Yeah,
See what you do for your district?
Look, you got to bring it home.
Yeah, that's true.
And in Chelmsford, it means that, Billricker Road and Riverneck Road, that intersection is going to be improved. It means that 495 is going to be improved. I mean, it really is going to have an impact on intersections, pedestrian bike lanes, safety, and just the time that people spend in their cars. If
Yeah.
we can just shave a little bit off of that, right, and also invest in public transportation.
You mean the cars that have 200 chips in the car? Yeah.
That's right. But $9 billion will come to Massachusetts over the next 5 years, and that doesn't include all the competitive grants that will also be available. And so, one big thing that I've been working on with Republicans in the Congress is sewage overflows, and upgrading our water treatment
Right.
plants so that doesn't inhibit economic development.
That's true because Chelmsford's maxed out, right?
Yes, and,
Yeah.
and their way out of this is to increase flows to the regional water treatment plant. And so that plant needs upgrades, right? It needs to be maintained. It needs to be in a position where it can accept more flows from surrounding towns so that they can attract this private investment. And so the infrastructure bill and the CHIPS and Science bill are great to ride alongside each of them because, one, they're going to create good-paying jobs, jobs from trade schools and good-paying jobs in our unions, as well as great-paying jobs for manufacturing and so much more. So we really do have a lot to be excited about in terms of seeing the return on these investments as they pertain to Chelmsford.
Electric cars?
Yeah.
Is that part of it also?
Absolutely. Big part of the infrastructure bills was making sure that we had the infrastructure to support charging stations
Right.
and electric vehicles. And the market's led on this. Consumers have been leading in terms of buying. People don't want to rely on the volatility of oil and gas anymore, right? They are pushing for not only saving our planet, but also getting off this the volatility of oil and gas. There's no question.
It's really finite, and a lot of people don't know that. It's not going to be there forever.
And look, whether you're talking about oil oligarchs like Vladimir Putin or big oil companies in the United States that have literally price gouged consumers in the aftermath of this pandemic. You don't want to be reliant on either one. I think the big push on, getting toward electric vehicles and moving off of fossil fuels as over the long term is so that we can bring down costs for hardworking families. Now, in the short term, we have to make sure, one of the things that I did with other members of the New England delegation was push on the Biden administration to release our New England strategic reserve of oil so that we can bring down those energy bills this winter, right? We added $1 billion, which Massachusetts will get $37 million for home heating assistance.
I see.
In the short term, we have to do everything that we can to reduce the pain that people are feeling when they get their energy bill. But long term, the answer is get off oil and gas. And we have in the Inflation Reduction Act, there is incentives and subsidies and rebates for households to upgrade their appliances to energy efficient, heat pumps, solar, geothermal, right? So that people can finally get off of oil and gas, which is where we need to go. If one, we're going to save our planet, and two, if we're going to reduce costs.
Interesting. I don't have very much time, but real quick, in regards to Roe versus Wade, what's going to happen there in Congress? I mean, when I was in college, I can remember we didn't have Roe versus Wade. Girls who had money went to London to get an abortion.
Is it important?
Or went to the back alley. Yeah. And organized crime was involved in that many years ago. And now we're leaving it to the states, and there's some people who want to make a national thing about it.
Yeah.
In Europe, it's wide open, and people are going to start flying back to Europe and stuff to get an abortion.
Look, you bring up an important point.
Yeah.
Abortions are still going to happen.
No,
it's just going to be accessible for people who can afford it, and everybody else. Women who can't afford it will die. That's just how it is, right? They'll either. Yeah. Some will, but from a procedure that is, in a back alley, or from not getting the care that you need. Look, I've been pregnant multiple times. I've had a couple of miscarriages, unfortunately. I know firsthand that if you deny a woman the care that she needs, whether she's pregnant or having a miscarriage in a timely manner, a woman's life is at risk.
That's right.
And that can't stand. I have 2 young daughters. They're 8 and 12, and I'm not going to let them grow up in a world where they have less rights than me, where they don't have the ability to access the same care that I've been able to access. And so it is true that there are folks who are talking about a national ban. I think sometimes in Massachusetts we get lulled into feeling like, well, our rights are protected here. But the first chance that Republicans have to get a majority to pass a national ban, they will. And so that will actually snuff out our rights here in Massachusetts, and it's an important thing for people to know.
It seems like Salem all over again, treating women like witches or treating physicians like they're the bad guys.
Yeah.
I don't understand it, because what Roe did was, codified everything in regards to the 50 states. And now it's up to the states. I'm not getting it, because I grew up knowing what happened at the beginning. But
and doctors are. We had a hearing on this in the healthcare subcommittee. I sit on the House Energy and Commerce Committee, and they're already having to make tough decisions about their care, because in some states they're being criminalized for administering the care they've always given. That's so dangerous.
I know.
mean, women are, like, if you think of an ectopic pregnancy, you've got to get care to a woman. And if you've got a doctor checking with the back room of attorneys on whether I can do A or B, as opposed to just giving life-saving care to a woman, we really are not just rolling back the clocks, but we're putting women's lives at risk. And so,
Well, that's what it is, rolling back the clock, in my opinion.
yeah,
You know?
absolutely. So, we need to codify. We need to codify Roe. And I think it's something that every American just needs to understand, the consequence of us not doing
They
that.
understand that in Kansas.
Yeah,
they
they
do.
do.
They do
They
understand
do.
that.
Yes.
Another thing, January 6th will live in infamy.
Yeah.
You were there, real quick. You were there the days before, and you were concerned.
Yes, I was.
How come the intelligence services were not concerned? I mean, that they weren't prepared.
Yeah, look, it's a question that I think a lot of us have asked, and it's the reason why we've had so many changes,
Right.
on the Hill as it relates to how we process intelligence, and also just leadership changes. There's no question, I think you know this story, but I got sworn in days before January 6th, so my daughters
Right.
and Dave, my husband, we were down there.
Right.
The girls were remote schooling, and so they were in my office every single day leading up to January 6th. But we would walk around the mall and we would see, folks coming in for this rally, this Stop the Steal rally, and we knew we didn't need to see any intelligence reports to know that it was going to be much bigger than people thought. And so thank heavens we got the girls out of there. We put them on a plane, we sent them home. And then the other thing I'm thankful for is that we marched back into the Capitol. Once the rioters and the mob were disbanded,
That was the leadership.
Yes,
Of both sides.
Yeah, marching back in over broken glass and seeing, the damage that had been done, but that, we were going to certify the election
Right.
because everyone needed to know that, that the big lie was exactly that. It was a big lie, and it was really important for the preservation of our democracy that we go back and we do our jobs. And look, I think one of the things that we're contending with right now is when people say irresponsible things, when they resort to violent speech, targeting someone like Speaker Pelosi,
Right. I was going to bring that up.
or Mike Pence, people's lives are in jeopardy. And
Not only their lives, in the periphery of their protection.
Yes, absolutely. The speaker's family,
Yeah.
right? I mean, this is a horrific, time when an elected official can say something that they know is untrue. That can spread like wildfire
Yeah.
on these social media platforms, and that kind of speech incites violence.
With chips. Social media platform with chips, right?
Well, I will say that it's very different. I think that bringing back chips is part of the solution. Reining in big tech also needs to be part of the solution.
Well, yeah, that's going to come. Do you think in Congress?
I do. We passed a privacy bill, which we don't have, a comprehensive privacy legislation in our country, which is a bit embarrassing given everything that the EU has done in this regard. And we passed it through the committee. It was like 52-2. And so we need to get that legislation over the line. One, because women in Republican-controlled states who maybe do a search on reproductive care can now, they're not safeguarded in terms of that data being used against them.
I see, yeah.
Yes, our children, right? We don't have age-appropriate design, right? Our young kids are exposed to mental health issues that's only being exacerbated on social media. So we have to protect our kids. And then this flow of misinformation and disinformation. Big tech, they profit off of that. The longer you stay on and they feed you information that correct, not correct, dangerous,
Good point.
they make money. And so we need to make sure that we've got guardrails in place so that we preserve our democracy while preserving free speech, because we can do both. But also, have some order, because it's completely out of hand, and it's going to get more violent.